Hello, everyone. I'm Ralph Burns. In addition to being a proud member of the board of directors of Black Mountain College Museum and Art Center, I am now also the lucky host of this episode of the museum's Faith in the Arts Conversations series. Our guest today, and we're so lucky, I'm so glad to have Annie here, is Annie Berman. Annie's a media artist who lives in New York City and is well, I don't know. I don't even know. I run out of superlatives when I start taking over to talk about you. Annie's one of my favorite people. Uh, Annie went to Brandeis University, where she got a degree in psychology and film studies and women's studies. And then after some time, I think she started working on her film in this interim. Annie went to Hunter College and the City University of New York, where she got a degree in media arts. We're going to get more into what Annie has done later, but Annie, do you mind if I just start off with a quote that you sent to me? And I think it's kind of a tone piece for the rest of our conversation. When we had exchanged some notes back and forth when we were talking about doing this together, and you sent your summation of what we said, but at the top of it, you said, just in my inbox, this quote from John Dewey. And this was significant for numbers of reasons, not the least of which is the quote itself, but the fact that John Dewey is integral to the existence of Black Mountain College. So I love that that sort of came serendipitously through you back to us here. And the quote is this: the real purveyors of the news are artists, for artists are the ones who infuse fact with perception, emotion, and appreciation. How does that resonate with you, and how does that kind of tie you to your work? Does it do that in any way you'd like to talk about?
Well, hello, Ralph Burns. It's so very very nice to be here, and I always just love conversing with you. And so this is
Well, thank you.
also a big honor because Black Mountain College is something kind of like a North Star, I think, for all of us artists, or at least for me, having read about it and seen some of the work. So I'm a long admirer of your work, as you know. So
Thank you. And yours,
but
smart. Yeah.
thank you. So, but this quote, it is I'm glad that it resonated with you also. And the surprising part too, aside from it appearing in my inbox, is that, like you said, Dewey was so influential in Black Mountain College. And I don't think I knew that when I received it and sent it to you. Um, but it's so simple in its statement, and yet so meaningful, right? We have perception, emotion, and appreciation. And when I think about the aims of the work that I make, or why I make work at all, I think at its best, I can hope that it will expand people's perception and appreciation. Um, and I think, um, that's the heart and soul of why we create. And yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, that kind of moves me right to where I want to go, and that is the work for which you are most known. It's not your only work by any shot, but The Faithful is the work of yours that I think most people would identify when they hear it to Annie Berman. And the Boston Globe, in their review of that film of yours, use, I think, the best four-word description, and I notice it's also on your website, the best four-word description of a film that I've ever seen, and it was ruminative, haunting, and strange. Let's talk about that. How does that make you feel about the film?
Well, Peter Keogh, the critic, would be happy to hear you say that it was the best four words. I will pass that on.
So,
Well, I mean, this is a very small film, even though it actually took 20 years to make. It was made pretty much on the kitchen table with help from friends, collaborators. So the fact that it was reviewed in the Boston Globe at all and made it as far as it did was, itself some sort of miracle in ways. But yeah, I remember just when seeing that article, on my desktop because I didn't have the paper. I was living here in New York. I went into my kitchen and shared it with my family and just did a little dance because it was this idea that this one, I had a film at 20 years later. Two, it reached an audience in the Boston Globe, and three, it really did feel like it was seen and understood. I think yeah, the ruminative part is something that I don't think I necessarily strived for, but it just really defines the work as a process, as something that I work in the essayistic tradition, which when I teach essay film, I point to Philip Lopate, who wrote the book on essay film, and he says that it's a search to find out what someone thinks about something, and I think in very many ways that rings true to me, that it's that the work was in itself a search, and so I had more questions than answers, and it created more questions, and I would follow the series of questions.
So great. Let's go back to the beginning of that process. Let's go back to what you're 21, 22 years old, and you go to Graceland. How did that come about, and what was the call of Graceland for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was 1999, and I was studying to be a doctor, and it was my senior year in college, and as I was taking classes in neuroscience and chemistry and biology, I was also taking anything that caught my eye. So I was taking sociology and anthropology, and there was this one class taught by Andreas Teuber called The Philosophy of Aesthetics, which really opened everything totally up and just put me on a new path, which was probably my original path all along that I didn't really know. So yeah. So we were he would put up a still photograph and we would look at it and ask questions and talk, and the whole class period would pass and we were still talking about this one still photograph, and I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know a photograph held so much or could hold so much. And the same, so then we were writing papers about Alfred Hitchcock in the way one would write about Dostoevsky, and I just, again, didn't know that a film could hold that much. And so I was really drawn to the camera, and my stepfather, who in the 1960s was a fashion photographer in London, he gifted me this case that was his original camera and all his lenses. And that alone was an act of faith because I had no idea how to use any of it. And
That's great.
so here I have this really nice camera, and I wanted to use it. It turns out Brandeis University, I went for sciences. It was very strong in science. It was strong in art too, but the art department at the time didn't consider photography a fine art. And so there was nothing for someone who wanted to pursue photography. So some friends and I started a photo club, and we commandeered a room, made it a dark room, and found an enlarger and all of these things, and then raised money for chemicals and film. So I loaded my pockets with film, and I went to visit my very dear friend who was studying architecture in Rome. And it was spring break, my last year in school, and I had this camera and I was shooting slide film. And so this is a long way to say, how did I get to Graceland? Because it starts
I loved it. No,
it starts it starts in Rome. Yeah, this is the story. This is the story. So there I am in Rome with this camera, and I'm at the Vatican. Never been before, and right across from the Vatican is a hot dog stand. And on this hot dog stand are these very large rainbow swirled lollipops, a row of them, like you would find at the circus, you can imagine, wrapped in plastic. But these aren't just any lollipops, because on the face of them is Pope John Paul II, who was the Pope in 1999. Yeah, his face just right there. And that was really it for me. It was like, I don't know, it just really grabbed a hold of me. And I took a photo, and it was on slide film, and I was going to do a project with it where I was going to transfer that image to other surfaces, because having just come off of this philosophy of aesthetics class, my head was just full of Walter Benjamin, Susan Sontag. I was really very much in conversation with them every day in my head, which was like, why do we photograph? What is the meaning of images? How how is right? It feels kind of archaic now that we're all carrying around cameras on our cell phones, and we're living in a very different world. But at the time, I was shooting on film. It wasn't a digital world yet. I wasn't connected to anyone online. I was just there with a camera, if you could remember the feeling. And so yeah, this my camera jammed that day. So I still have when I processed it, I still have this half exposed frame where it was half light and half this lollipop on a hot dog stand. So yeah, that image really just stayed with me, and it was one of these unfulfilled projects. And so I just on my way home, I was thinking, what is it about this lollipop? Well, clearly there's this tension between the holy and the crass or the commercial and this consumable object that you would actually lick and devour. And that seemed like something the Vatican might not, want to encourage. So I thought it was funny and light and playful, but also curious and strange and ironic, I guess. And so on the plane on the way home, I thought, it's really not that strange. I mean, I'm from America. We do this all the time. We commercialize everything at all that we can. And so then at that point, I just thought about Elvis Presley, who I really had no connection with. I was born the year he died. He wasn't really a part of my life, but at the same time, he was in the way that he is part of anyone's life, in which we know his face, we've seen it everywhere we look. And so I just thought that as disparate as these images seemed, there was this real connection. And it was also an instinct. And I just felt the need to go to Graceland. And I found out that every year on the anniversary of his death, fans were making these pilgrimages. And this was 2000 that I went. So it was, what year was that? You will know better than I do. If you do, 78 was the first anniversary, 88, 98. It was,
77, yes, yes.
yeah, I think it actually was a big one. It may have been the 20th anniversary, but now here we are, we're coming up on the 50th anniversary next year and the 49th this August. So very long way to get to Graceland, but
Well, it's a great story. And so Graceland, how did that feel to you in when you compared it or felt the difference between it and the lollipop in Rome?
yeah, so when I arrived, I was looking for lollipops. I was I wasn't yet seeing everything there was to see. I was going to gift shops and seeing what was there, and actually quite pleased with the things I was finding. It was like um snow globes of Elvis, like I think there was something consumable. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was taffy. There was taffy, dancing Elvis's clocks, all these things. Um, but it wasn't long before I wanted to get deeper into the commercialization. It really only seemed to be interesting in the ways in which it entered into experience and fans and why they were doing it and what it meant to them. So it was even that first year that I began talking to people on the street and getting to know them. But at the same time, and I include this in the film, is you can really see that I would be talking to somebody, and then my camera would sort of they're answering this emotional moment about the first time they saw Elvis in person and how meaningful it was, and then my camera's just drifting down to their shirt and the buttons and all of the things that they've made. Uh, and so yeah, I clearly had my own bias and my own objective at that time. And but I kept returning and kept getting deeper. And I think it was probably the second or the third year that I met you. And I remember at this point when I was filming that first year, I really didn't know I was making a film. I was attempting to make a film, but it was really an exploratory trip. It was wondering if there is a connection, if there's something there. I didn't go necessarily with a shot list or this sense of what I was going to find. It was really this open road. It was, and
Oh, that's great. I was going to ask that as my next question. Did
yeah.
you know you were making a film yet? But you didn't.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways I did because my another gifted camera. So for my graduation present, my grandmother gave me this mini DV camera, and I was also learning to use that because it was brand new to me. And it was the sense of anything is possible. I've got this camera, and we rented a car, and nothing. I didn't do any of this myself. It might look like I did, but it was really a collaborative effort. And um, I think there's no easier way to get friends together to do something and help you than to say, let's make a movie. Because I think,
That's
yeah,
great. I'll remember that. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
you talked about the four best words of ruminative or
Yeah.
haunting and strange. And I would say five, let's make a movie. It's like, if I
Yeah.
asked you to come paint my house, you'd be like, no, thanks. But
That's
if
right.
I say, let's make a movie, you drop everything and come
On
with
my
me.
way. Let's do it. Yes.
Well, we should do, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, where were we? I do want to make the movie with you. So yeah, so these friends came along and we were in this together. We're reading books in the car and the long, oh, I can't remember how long a drive it was, 15-hour drive from
So,
Boston at the time to Memphis. Yeah, and then we arrive and we have no permission to do very much at all. As we learn, they tell us that we can't film inside the gates of Graceland, but we can film on the sidewalk. So this was all just learning by doing. And but then I remember very clearly, I think it was a year into this where I had all this material. I didn't yet know what it was, but I did feel there was more there. And that actually happened at the culmination, of this event, which you could speak much more eloquently about, which is why I enlisted you in the film, and you did in the film. Uh,
that was a
but
long time
so I'm
ago.
going to steal your words
Yeah, no,
verbatim.
please do. No. I was clearer about things back then than I am now. It's one of the
I doubt
interesting,
it.
one of
I
the,
doubt it.
no,
Well, this
but
is the problem with people who speak in images, right? I mean, not for me, not for you. You're the most eloquent photographer I've ever met. Um, but I think we've said the things we have to say in the work, and then we have to now translate it into other words, which for me is yeah, more of a struggle. But so on the eve of Elvis's death, there is this very solemn ritual that takes place every year where his music is piped through the speakers, and they usually go into the much more quiet, more religious undertoning tones of this gospel music. It sets this mood, and
Or You
they,
Lonesome Tonight?
well,
I
yeah,
mean,
I mean,
that's one of the standards.
I was not expecting this at all, how
Yeah.
quiet it got,
Yeah.
truly quiet in an enormous crowd on the highway, US 1, Interstate 1 shuts down. And
Elvis Presley Boulevard at that point, too.
yeah, it became Elvis Presley
Yeah.
Boulevard, and fans are all gathered. They've been there all day in 100-degree heat. It's oppressive. It's really an act of sacrifice if we think about pilgrimage and what that entails. I mean, I think there's no doubt it's a pilgrimage for people who make the sacrifices of the time and the money and the heat. And then the event begins, and they light an eternal flame. Excuse me, there is an eternal flame
Right.
on Elvis's gravesite, and they light a torch off of the flame, and then fans one by one go and line up and light their candle and proceed to the gravesite up the hill. Um,
Am I
and
correct in remembering that some people go up to the graveside and light torches off of the eternal flame, and then they march back down the driveway to the gate, where then people come in and light from the torches that were used to take the fire from the eternal flame. It's a little convoluted, but I think that's how it works.
That's exactly how it
I
works.
think the flame moves, the fire moves,
Yeah,
and then it goes back up to the grave.
and then it goes back up to the grave. Yeah. Yeah. So I remember taking part in that, and I remember being really unprepared for all of it. And then I think I had snuck in a camera in a bag. So you see it bouncing around. And then the wax starts burning my hand because I didn't have the proper holder that a lot of people have. And
called a styrofoam cup.
oh, the technical term. Yeah. The relic of the styrofoam cup. And then so I just remember thinking, oh, soon I'm almost going to be down and I can throw this candle that's been torturing me out. And I was just about to throw it out when I stopped, because I had the sense somebody was looking at me, and I turned and there's a woman glaring at me. And I realized that this candle's still sacred because it has been lit off that flame. And I cannot dispose of it. I have to keep it burning. And I look up and around and I see that all the other candles are still burning in the street. And so I put mine alongside. And that's, I guess, how I get initiated into what is the candlelight vigil. And
that's interesting. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Well, it's an ancient human trope, apparently, because while I was in Jerusalem, I witnessed in the Greek Orthodox Church a very similar phenomenon where the flame would come down in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre into the tomb where Jesus was buried, and the bishop would get the flame and come out of the tomb, and then that flame would get passed through the crowd, and it would actually go to the people outside, and people outside would take the flame that came then from heaven and now is outside and run down the streets with it to bring it to people's houses.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, just being that the flame really is used, fire is just used in the very similar way, across religious rituals.
Yes, it's so elemental. I mean, you see the fire and it just transfixes you. And there's that thing that happens when you stare into the flame. It's almost this portal. Yeah, I mean,
I think I spent my childhood staring into that flame.
I
Yeah.
know. And so, well, it was just instantly also thinking about at the Vatican again, just always also thinking when I was experiencing these things, I wonder what the corollary is. And so I knew that there was this candlelight procession that takes place on Easter. And so eventually I got to go back to the Vatican for an Easter with the Pope and see him, where suddenly the whole basilica gets illuminated by this candle procession. And so yeah, there was something very timeless about that. And the other thing I wanted to say was that the other thing that struck me was that this was not something that the Elvis estate, his heirs who run Graceland, this is not something that they created. And I learned that while I was there, is that when Elvis died, his father insisted they open the gates and that there was this open viewing and that fans got a chance to say goodbye. And after that, it seems like the gates shut. And while Elvis was alive, he was always very, very accessible. And fans all speak about how they would show up at the gates and then who knows what would happen. And so then the gates were closed and fans had that same impulse and memory of being there and being with Elvis. So when his anniversary would come, they suggested to the estate, let's do this thing. And the estate was worried that it would become unruly or out of hand. And the president of the fan club, who I interviewed, Beth Pease, said, if anyone steps out of line, we'll take care of it. And
yeah, I've heard those words there.
Yeah, I think they use stronger words than I did. Like we'll take them down or something like that, or we'll show them. So and so they opened the gates and it's been open ever since. And it's a fan-led initiative. and that was also of interest to me.
Yeah, that's great. So the film, the full title of the film is The Faithful, the King, the Pope, the Princess. So the King, Elvis. Let's talk a while again about the Pope, because I think you went 2 or 3 times to Rome. And how was
Yes.
that? How did that work for you?
Well, I will still talk about the Pope, but I also do want to say that I want to tell the story about when I met you because it really changed the trajectory of the film. And so my friend Marika Kay, who was the still photographer on The Faithful, and she came
Yeah.
with us on those shoots, she was working at a museum in New York and discovered this book, Elvis in Maryland, about this traveling show. And she gifted it to me. And in that book were photographs of uh, Ralph Burns took of these Elvis weeks. And I was just transfixed. And I just knew I needed to meet you and to call you. And I found your number somehow, and you picked up the phone.
I always
And but that was it. I hung up just elated, like, here's the one person who understands this phenomenon in a way no one else can and is able to articulate it in such a beautiful way. And at the time, the film wasn't yet an essay film. My voice wasn't in it. And I thought, well, here is somebody who could voice what I've been trying to say better than I could. And that was entirely the case. And so I arrived at your studio and we spoke forever, and we've been speaking ever since. And the
And here we
film,
are again
and
speaking.
here we are again. But the film, it had to get past that superficial layer and towards this meaningful layer. And even though you were saying all of the things that I arrive at myself much later in my own life, and um, I knew how profound they were. I hadn't yet lived them. It took a bunch more years for me to live them and really say, I could intellectually know what you mean, but I now I can feel and know in that other way of knowing what
Well,
you
thank you.
mean.
That's very kind to share that with me and everyone else who's going to see this.
Well, it's not kind at all. I really, I
Really.
feel like I feel like I could say a lot more, and that we all have direct influences in our lives, and you've been a very central influence to my
Well,
work and my thinking, and I'm just very thankful for everything that you've given me. And when I think back too, I think about how in those years, having just graduated college and reading all the time, I was very much purely in my head. And, I
hmm.
was reading about Black Mountain College and Joseph Albers and this idea of art making as doing, as process, and that the picking up of the camera and the being there and being with people and being with you and being in the environment and in the experience, that was my other education. And I think this is how um, I didn't abandon the mind, but how I found that necessary wholeness, the relation between being and thinking. And so back to the Pope. Uh,
I want to interject here because
yeah.
you said it's really interesting. Right before we started our conversation, Jeff Onal, our wonderful director, and I were talking, and he asked me about you a bit. And I said, one of the things I was thinking as I was preparing for this, that of all the people I know, uh, you're the person who, if you had lived between 1933 and let's say 1954, though the college stayed into 57, but 54 was the end of the Korean War. During that period of time, had you been of an age where you would have been aware of this, you're one of the only people I know who would have wound up at Black Mountain College because of the way you think, because of what you desire, because of your urge for creativity. And I told Jeff that. I said, Annie Berman would have somehow learned of the existence of Black Mountain College, and she would have at least have gone there to see what it was about.
Oh my God, that would be such a dream. I would take the potion or whatever to go back in time, even if I meant
really.
ruining the rest of my path.
We all want that poetry. Yeah. You
When I read about it,
yeah.
I think, yes, this is what I've been searching for, this idea of a utopia for artists. It's kind of what led me to make another work called Utopia 1.0. I think I'm eternally searching for it. And I think it's a reason why I'm living in New York City, despite all the sacrifices that entails, living in a shoebox and doing what you do to make life work. But just so that I can collide with um, artists and ideas and all these things. So, but thank you. That's a very generous thing to say.
Well, it's true, and you're doing a great job of colliding with creators and thinkers, and it's just good to see. So we were going somewhere. I think we were heading to the Princess.
Right, by way of the Pope. Yeah, so
Pope.
the Pope, these things are all cyclical because they're these anniversaries. And so with the Pope, I returned for an Easter at the Vatican, and then I was able to film. I mean, a lot of this was also about how do I gain access, and sometimes it was okay to be outside of things, but I did give it another try. And so at the Vatican, by real luck or audacity, I met with this press liaison who I think took pity on me because she was the first woman. Yeah, she was the first woman to work at the Vatican, and she saw me still 21, 22 years old, trying to make this happen, fumbling over her questions because at the time I didn't want to reveal Elvis was also part of this. I was just describing why I was interested in the Pope, and she sort of caught me in that. And so, I kind of got flushed, and my whole team started to blush. And long story short, she phoned me and said I had permission, and she granted us all press passes. So this time we were legitimated and legitimized. We actually got to stand on the press platform with our little camera next to everyone in the world, the BBC and everyone else. And this is that moment where the Pope passes from darkness to light with this candle for this vigil. And right beforehand, I don't want to give away the film, but it's one of my favorite scenes.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Maybe you describe it.
Yeah, maybe you.
I've done all the talking.
No, this is great. This is what this is about. It's about you. So no, describe that scene the way you want to. It's a really powerful scene that, maybe we should pull a Terry Gross here and say, no, don't do it.
No, don't describe it. Yeah.
Don't describe it too much.
Don't describe it. Yeah. So
the haunting scene, it's part of that haunting nature of that film. It lingered in me for a long time after I saw it, because there's also this thing between life and death that is going on. You understand the whole time that you're watching someone who is leaving life, and people are still adoring that person and giving to that person everything we'd give to the most alive being there is. And that scene sort of captures that in the most dramatic of ways, and painful for me. I found it, a little difficult not to watch, but difficult as a human to kind of understand the transitional nature, and then the violation, which is what we're not going to talk about, the kind of the violation of that space. But you can
now everyone's wondering.
Yeah, well, that's why we watch the film. He's moving through the dark space, moving into the light, but then there is a violation of that going on in a certain way. No, that was a scene I really felt his tender grip on existence. I mean, I really could feel his mortality during that scene, the way that thing moved through the darkness, and even the violative part of that, I thought added to the yeah. I mean, you made a comment. I can see you're wondering what part that is, and it has to do with.
No, I do remember.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Good.
So they had made an announcement in every language they
This is what
knew.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, they said this is what's going to happen. The Pope is he's waiting in the atrium, and we're gonna be enveloped in darkness, and then it will be gradually illuminated by the light of the paschal candle. And so then they say, please refrain from using cameras with flash so as not to disrupt the liturgy. And then we have to wait, as they say it, 5 more times in everyone's language. And so at first you think, oh, maybe people didn't understand, but then you remember that they actually did translate it. And so at that moment that he passes in front of people, every person puts their camera to their face and clicks the button, almost like an involuntary reaction, right? It's like their brain knows, but their body's just doing it. And you see the flashes go off.
Yeah.
All it doesn't seem like there's a single person who doesn't have a camera with a flash. And in fact, because we were on this is part that you can't see in the film, because I was standing on a press platform, there were actually people and pilgrims behind the press platform who couldn't see any of this. And so this was a scene that was cut from the film, but there were people passing their point and shoot cameras to press who were, some of us were taking pictures for them and then passing their cameras back.
Okay.
So,
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes.
so, but yeah, so that became like, someone asked me if you had to pick one moment from the film as a sort of emblematic scene, what would it be? And I instantly said that one. But I think it speaks to that impulse of why do we do it? Why do we photograph, and that almost compulsion to do so? And it's not just the photograph, it's also the having a piece of someone. It's when we think about the relic and the ripping off clothes from celebrities, or the, grabbing the scarf from Elvis, who he always was prepared with a sweat douse scarf ready to share that one, and on came the next one. And so I don't know how many thousands of these scarves that he touched and sweat in have made their way into shrines or museums or collections, personal collections. Yeah.
Do you think part of taking a photograph is an act of possession? Not for you, but let's talking about photographs of the Pope. I mean, is that what's happening there?
I think so. I think it's I think that there's a sense of holding on to, I think we do it with everything, with the people we love, freezing time. We know that these moments are fleeting. We know that time is fleeting. And I think part of it we know in other, like I said, is just really a need. I think it taps into a need that existed before the camera existed. And yeah, and we see it now in any kind of concert you could go to, any kind of celebrity event. It's almost like we're all paparazzi, whether we are publishing them or not, in some sense. And I thought about that before. What if I were the Pope? Just the vantage point of what he would see, so that there was a time when a Pope would greet the mass and see eyes and see faces, and today you don't. You're just seeing yourself, well, the cameras. And so when we think about connection and what it means to experience something directly, those were the questions that I was still asking, because again, it's something in between you. It's this mechanical mediation that is representing the experience. And did we actually have the experience if now we're watching it on the screen, even though we're here right now? And I'm here we are. I don't know where you actually are. Your bits are coming to space and then coming back to my computer.
So let's kind of bring this to some sort of place of rest. And for me, it's understanding when it was that you understood where the work you had done, this immense collection of images, was becoming what it became. This very personal film, this very meditative film, a film that surprised me when I first saw it. I listened to you, we talked throughout much of that process, and I heard a film being made. And then the film that you made took me back in a really good way, took me back because it wasn't what I expected.
Mm.
How did that happen? When did that happen? When did you realize? And then we're going to have to let the conversation go. And I won't tell you the story about the time I almost died in Utah. So we can, yeah,
You.
you'll
Oh
just,
no.
you'll have to wait for that one. Yeah.
Um, how did I know where it was going? It took so many variations. At first it was a film called Our Father the King, and it was about Elvis and the Pope. And then at some point, Princess Diana worked her way into it. It seemed like it was too much of a direct comparison. And so she rounded it out by giving it a different realm of a woman, royalty versus religion and music and pop culture. Um, and so then at some point, I think a mentor of mine, Nancy Salzer, said to me, this connection and these ideas only exist in your head. And so what if you let us, what if you let us into your head?
Everything does, yes.
Right. So it's like, well, there's an idea. And I did, some of my influences also include Agnes Barda and Chris Marker, who, kind of pioneered this essayistic filmmaking. And it always, just really spoke very directly to me. So that also felt right, and I gave it a try. And again, it was learning by doing. It's like I would try words to images, and then I would know what if it either works or doesn't work. There was this instinctual process in that, and eventually arriving at that style or mode of working and making these connections, and realizing that I really wanted the audience to be making the connections themselves. And I wanted to provide just the barest thread for them to make the connections and appreciate each moment to its fullest without giving it away. So I go back to that quote you started with, the Dewey quote about, I have it here, about perception, emotion, and appreciation. And that really actually guided the voice writing, because I thought, and sometimes because I did bring in my editor, I edited it for years myself, but Andre Valentin Almeida is a brilliant editor and filmmaker in his own right. And then Sarah Enid Hagee also helped in this process quite a lot. And I would also have to convince Andre or Sarah that this scene is essential and has to be there. And if they weren't getting it, I wasn't doing it. And so I had to figure out what that missing appreciation bit was, like what one thing leading up to this will help you really love this scene and make it impossible to cut. So
That's brilliant. What a brilliant approach. That's wonderful.
thanks. It was out of necessity, but
Yeah,
it's how
great.
how I developed. But I also think back to Black Mountain College and this idea of expanding the way we see and just seeing and perception. And I look to your photographs and I see that when I looked at the images in this book and I saw they looked to me like images shot by an outsider who's looking in, and yet they were so close, literally close. You could tell the proximity of the camera was very close. And I really hadn't seen anything like that before. And I was thinking, who is this person? How does he do it? And I had the privilege of watching you work and seeing how truly there you are. Most photographers that were there, they kept a very safe distance, and they're using bigger lenses. You had this wide lens, and you were like this with people, and they knew you because you'd come every year. You developed this rapport with people. They trusted you. You earned their trust and continue to do so. And then I think of perception, of these three words, and I think of how we have five senses, and we're taught that, and I studied that in neuroscience. But watching you work, I know there are a lot more senses at play. I mean, you would never miss a decisive moment. It could be happening in your periphery, and we're talking, and suddenly, let's snap. Uh, and I'm not exaggerating. And then I got to also work, I observe you in the dark room where you didn't use a thermometer. You also had another sense of temperature. You're able to control and feel all of these things. So your work, I guess that's what I was picking up on when I was looking at it. It's imbued with so much humanity that is you, right? And I don't know how that gets transmitted. And that's I think what draws me to the artwork that I love and also the pursuit of making something is that there's some some spark of something that draws us in, that ignites us, a fire within us, and it makes us feel more alive, and we want to know what that is. And we've been talking about this and how it's so hard to put in words, and that seems to be the failure of language, but it does seem to be the promise of art, because we find a medium that suddenly conveys something unconveyable. And and I felt that in your photographs, and and in these moments that I've learned to pay attention to, because there are these sparks, or these messages that when we're living inside of a work, we hear more clearly.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes. Thank you. Well, I think you put it very eloquently. And I think this is the place where I look at my list and I see that there are probably 41 items on the list, and I might be able to check off two. So we're going to have more conversations like this. And I think I will leave here better for having spent this time again with you.
As well, I thank you so
Yeah,
much for having
yeah.
this conversation. And but damn you for never finishing.
That's true. I am going to finish that. Here I am sitting in research. I'm sitting in the research library of the Black Mountain College Museum, and you're sitting in New York City, and we're having this wonderful exchange of memories, ideas, and process. And I really can't think of much in life that's more rewarding, thrilling to me than this process, getting to explore. And you did an amazing job of that for us. And I really thank you.
Thank you.
I don't
Likewise.
know,
I mean,
I don't know
this
why I'm
was
so red, but I think it's because you kept embarrassing me.
and actually there in the last, when you just said whatever you said, there were flashes of light behind you. I don't know if you're facing something that has, but it reminded me of the scene we're talking about,
Yeah, that scene is fantastic.
yeah.
Well, to everyone who has the opportunity to see this, please try to find the faithful, the King, the Pope, and the Princess by Annie Berman, and go to Annie's website and you'll learn more about her. And I cannot tell you again, Annie, what a delight it is to hear you and watch you think, and to hear you think, and to hear you make us all a bit wiser when we listen to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ralph Burns. You're the,
Well,
you know, you're the one with all the wisdom. And so
we have to stop. No, I have no wisdom. I gave it up. Yeah, too much
thank
trouble.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, sending you love.
You too.